Welcome to Snail Story, where every tale is a slow journey, yet deep enough to touch the truest part of your heart. Today, we bring you the story of a woman once looked down upon because of her humble beginnings and a CEO who believed he would never truly need anyone by his side. From what seemed like an ordinary work invitation, they found themselves swept into a storm where love and trust were tested by poisonous rumors, opposition, and hidden agendas. And in the end, under the glare of camera flashes and the weight of public opinion, they chose to stand together not for image, not for reputation, but because their hearts had found where they belonged. If you believe true love can rise above every prejudice, stay with us until the very last moment of today's story. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Snail Story, so each week you can find a gentle moment in the midst of life's rush. Asterisk. Nights at the port always had their own scent. The salty temps of the sea breeze, the musty smell of damp ropes, and the faint trace of engine oil. Inside Cole Maritime's cold storage No. 7, the fluorescent tube light on the ceiling buzzed faintly, its bluish-white glow spilling in icy streaks across the concrete floor. Lena Hart pulled her collar higher, slipped her gloves back on, pushed the last pallet into place, and marked it with a felt-tip pen. Her breath came out in thin clouds. Lena's night shifts were usually quiet. She liked the steady order of the numbers on the checklist, liked the sound of the compressors humming like a steady heartbeat. Here, everything followed a rule: in, out, temperature, weight, signature. Not like the years before, when her life had no rule except survive. Tomorrow? Lena, need an extra hand in the office area? Gloria's voice crackled over the radio, soft but firm. Just a small incident. On my way. The cold room door swung open, and a rush of warmer hallway air hit her face, making her blink. She quickly stripped off her reflective vest and walked past the row of glass doors. In the main office, a wall of monitors showed the schedule of ships coming and going, green dots moving like fireflies across the nighttime sea. At the end of the hall, a door was ajar. It was the small break room. It's temporarily converted into a nursery ever since the boss's young son occasionally came with his father to the port. A cry made Lena stop short. Not the loud, angry kind, but a thin, fragile sound, drawn out like a wet thread, breaking in uneven breaths. She glanced around. No one else was there. Instinct made her knock softly on the door. A little boy sat on the toddler bed, wide eyes brimming, cheeks flushed red. His gray sweater with a tiny anchor pattern was rumpled from being tugged. A plush seal lay abandoned on the floor. "Hey." "There," Lena whispered, careful not to move closer. "What's your name?" He didn't answer, only sobbed, body stiff. She remembered the name from internal updates. Evan, 3 years old, quiet. His mother had passed long ago. She scanned the room. A bottle of milk gone cold, a towel thrown askew, the window shut tight. She lowered her voice further, her words rolling softly like a small wave. "It's okay, someone's here now." When she touched the plush seal, Evan paused mid-cry, eyes following her. She picked it up, set it on the bed, then sat down in a chair, keeping her distance. Gloria's earlier advice echoed in her head. No one asked you to be a mother. You just need to be decent. So she leaned forward, its arms opening very slowly, like offering an umbrella to someone standing in the rain. The boy edged forward, hesitating as if testing the floor. Then suddenly, he collapsed into her chest, tiny hands gripping her collar. The sobbing stopped abruptly, like a string cut loose. Evan's breathing was quick at first, the scent of baby shampoo mingling with a hint of sea salt. Lena rested her hand on his back, swaying gently, humming a tune without words, the same lullaby she used to sing to her little brother in their damp, rented room years ago. The door burst open. A man stood frozen in the doorway, hall light outlined. The sharp planes of his face, dark hair slightly mussed, tie loosened. Lena recognized him instantly. Adrian Cole, the same man whose photo appeared in business papers. In meetings with ministers, never looking as worn as he did now. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was cold enough to challenge the chill. "Of the cold storage, who gave you permission to touch my son?" Evan flinched, clinging tighter. Lena didn't answer right away. She felt the small nails digging into her collarbone, but kept rocking, unhurried. "I said, put him down." Adrian took a step forward, chin lowering. "You're an employee, you are not she." Evan suddenly blurted out some sound, not quite words, but his hand shot upward as if calling for help. His chest hitched, breath turning ragged. On the verge of another cry, Lena looked straight at Adrian. "If I put him down now, he'll panic. You can stand there, just a moment." Her voice was calm, neither challenging nor pleading, just stating a fact. Adrian froze. In his eyes, something shifted, like water rippling under wind. He looked at his sun-face blotchy eyelids, swollen from tears, then at the hand gripping the woman's shirt. The anger thinned, as if a fog had been wiped from glass. "Where's Gloria?" His voice was hoarse. "I called her," Lena replied. "She should be here soon." They stayed like that, one rocking the boy, one standing garden till glorious. Hurried footsteps approached. She stopped at the door, her glance sweeping over the scene in an instant, but taking in everything. "Sir," she said lowly, "let her keep rocking him." The little she caught herself. The boy has been fussy all day. Adrian pinched the bridge of his nose, as if holding something back. He set his phone on the table and sat on the doorframe, stepped close enough now without crossing the space. "Evan," he said gently, "Daddy's here." Lena felt the boy's breathing steady. She didn't know why someone on a 3-month temp contract was sitting here holding the son of a shipping magnate in the middle of the night. But her body knew. The weight of a small life pressed to her chest was a memory that couldn't be erased. Her brother had been just like this. On stormy nights when their mother worked shifts and the old fridge groaned in the corner, Evan drifted to sleep. Lena waited a few minutes to make sure it was deep, then carefully laid him on the bed, tucking the plush seal into his elbow. He rolled slightly, murmuring in his sleep. She pulled the thin blanket over him as she stood. Her knees tingled from sitting too long. Kirian rose too. His face had changed, less cold, less sharp, leaving only the shadows of fatigue. He stopped, as if sorting through the many words he was used to wielding in boardrooms. "I'm sorry for the way I spoke." Lena nodded. "It's fine." She glanced at Evan, then back at him. "Some kids only sleep when they feel safe. No reason needed." "You know a lot," he said, not sarcastically. "No," she smiled faintly. "I just once cared for a kid afraid of the dark." Gloria handed her a cup of warm water. "Thank you," she said, her tone like a blanket. For tonight, Adrian studied her like she was a new map. "You work in cold storage." "Night shift. What's your name?" "Lena Hart." He nodded, fingers adjusting his tie, then letting it fall loose again. "I'm Adrian." The introduction was clipped, but for the first time, he spoke to her as a person, not a job title. Lena tightened her gloves, ready to leave. "I should get back." "Break's over." "Wait." He glanced at the wall clock, then at his son's hand on the blanket. If he's like this again tomorrow night, would you?" "He's not on my shift," she replied, hearing her tone firmer than intended. She drew a breath, softened it. "But if someone calls, I'll come." Gloria smiled faintly, the way only someone who'd lived long enough could. Understanding words left unsaid. "I have your number." Lena stepped into the hall. The sound of waves faint in the distance. She leaned against the wall for a moment, feeling her heartbeat. Her shadow stretched long and steady on the white tile. She thought of the old apartment, of a tiny ear pressed to her chest years ago. Some things you thought you'd locked away turns. Out they were just waiting for the right cry to open again. Lena. Adrian's voice behind her. She turned. Thank you, he said. Nothing more, no promise, no money. But in his gaze was an acknowledgement. A man used to commanding ships and schedules had just been powerless before the simplest thing on earth, a child. She gave a small nod and left. Back in the cold storage, she pulled the heavy door shut, the cold rushing in like a beast's breath. The checklist still lay there, the marker still uncapped. The work still demanding precision, as if no child had ever rested against her heart. But every empty box now carried a different weight, not just goods, but the pulse of the people in this port. When she marked the last box, the radio crackled again. Gloria's voice was soft as wool. He's sleeping peacefully. Thank you. Lena set down the pen and stood still for a moment. Outside, the port city breathed, ship lights blinking like low stars. You're welcome, she said into the radio, then smiled to herself. From this night on, she knew there was an invisible thread tying her to that room with a thin blanket and the plush seal. A fragile thread, but strong, like the things you only notice after weathering a lot of cold down the hall. In the softly lit room, Adrian sat in a chair, listening to his son's even breathing. He looked at his own hands used to signing contracts. Steering the helms of container ships now, simply resting by a small blanket. He thought of the cold storage worker with a voice like still water. And for the first time in a long while, he wondered, maybe to survive a storm, you don't need a stronger Oru, just need someone who knows how to rock you through the night. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, thin, light like a damp cloth slipped through the long windows of warehouse. No 7. Lena stood at the corner of the work table, marker in hand, filling in boxes on her checklist. The air held the mingled scents of salt and sea-soaked wood. Outside, a ship's horn cut through the early fog, low and drawn out, like the sea calling its own. Miss Hart. The male voice made her look up. Adrian Cole stood in the doorway, his light gray suit looking as if it hadn't passed through a sleepless night, at least from a distance. Up close, Lena noticed the faint shadows under his eyes and the slightly askew tie, as though he hadn't checked a mirror. It made him seem less like the towering head of a conglomerate and more like an ordinary man. Good morning, Mr. Cole, she said, folding the checklist. The warehouse isn't due for a shipment yet. Do you need? I need to talk. He interrupted, his tone no longer as sharp as it had been the night before. If you have a few minutes, Lena glanced at the wall clock. A few crates still needed to be loaded onto pallets, but curiosity won. All right. Instead of leading her to the office, he walked straight toward the deck of a vessel moored at Pier 3. The air was still a little chilly, the early breeze brushing across the water. Beneath their feet, the ship's wooden planks were smooth with moisture, still holding the warmth of the previous day. Adrian leaned against the railing, paper coffee cup in hand, eyes on the open water. Last night, he began, then paused, as though choosing his words with care. Last night, you helped my boy. Not just to sleep. You made him calm. I haven't seen that in a long time. Lena wasn't sure how to respond. She tucked her hands into her coat pockets and stayed quiet. He turned to her. Do you know I've been developing a community project? No. I work night shifts in cold storage. I don't read the company reports. The corner of his mouth lifted almost a smile. Right, I forgot. He cleared his throat. It's called Harbor Hands. We aim to support fishing families in small coastal towns, providing safe lodging while they're out at sea for long stretches, medical aid, and education for their children. Lena gave a small nod, eyes drifting to the horizon. The name tugged at memories of her childhood in a fishing village. Storm nights when her parents hadn't yet returned. She and her little brother huddled in a tin-roofed shack, listening to the wind howl through cracks in the door. If there had been a place to stay, someone to watch over them, maybe they wouldn't have been so afraid. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because I think you could help. You understand what makes a child feel safe? What makes adults trust someone with their children? Those things don't show up in a financial report." Lena gave a short laugh, though not from humor. "You know I have no qualifications. No degree in sociology or psychology. Just a high school diploma and years of odd jobs. I don't need a researcher. I need someone who's lived what we're trying to change." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Someone like you." Lena swallowed. His words stirred something in her chest, but reason reminded her this was just work. "I'll have to think about it," she said. "I don't want to promise and then walk away halfway." Adrian nodded. "I'm not asking for an answer now, just that you consider it." They stood in silence for a while, the calls of seabirds above and the sound of waves brushing the hull filling the gap. Adrian took a sip of coffee, then added, "Evan wouldn't eat breakfast today." Gloria said, "He asked where you were." Lena pressed her lips together. She hadn't intended to get attached, but the image of Evan's tearful eyes from last night rose in her mind, leaving a hollow space she couldn't explain. "Maybe because I wasn't there," she said. "Kids do that." Hi, not arguing. "If you have time, you could drop by. Not an obligation." That afternoon, Lena's shift ended earlier than usual. She washed her face in the break room, swapped her jacket, and walked slowly toward the administration building. Sunset bathed the port in a warm, golden layer, containers stacked like giant Lego blocks. Gloria opened the door at her knock. "I knew it," the older woman smiled, stepping aside. "He's in the playroom, but fair warning, he's been missing you all day." Lena stepped in to find Evan sitting in the middle of the rug, surrounded by wooden blocks. When he looked up, his face lit up. He dropped the block in his hand and ran to wrap his arms around her legs. "Hey there." Lena crouched, rubbing his back. "What have you been up to?" Evan didn't answer, just tugged her toward the blocks and handed her a piece. She sat down, and together they began building a small pure blue blocks for water. Brown four ships. Adrian stood at the doorway, saying nothing. He leaned his shoulder against the frame, watching them, a woman in a plain sweater and a curly-haired boy, both bent over their careful work. There was a quietness in the scene he hadn't felt in his home for a long time. When the pier was finished, Evan climbed into Lena's lap, resting his head against her chest as he had the night before. Adrian stepped closer. "Would you be willing to join a trial meeting with the project team next week?" he asked. "No strings attached, just to listen and give your thoughts." Lena looked up. "And if I'm not a fit, then at least we'll know we asked the right person." Gloria appeared with 2 cups of tea, setting one in front of Lena. "Give it a try, dear. People usually invite you because they see something worth having." Lena took the cup, warmth spreading into her palms. She looked at Evan, fiddling with a wooden anchor, then at Adrian. "I'll come, but I'll warn you, I'm not good at speaking in front of people." "We don't need a speaker," Adrian replied. "We need the truth." That night, as Lena left the administration building, she paused on the steps, watching the lights dance on the water. Ships sat anchored in the distance, their blinking lights like moving stars. Adrian's words came back to her. Someone who's lived what we're trying to change. She didn't know if she could change anything. But in that moment, with the salty air in her lungs and the sound of wind threading through the mooring lines, she felt as though she stood at a threshold. On one side, her night shifts in the cold storage. On the other, something unknown, maybe good, maybe not. But certainly not as cold as the cement beneath her boots. Stepping down from the porch, she told herself, just next week, just to listen, nothing more. But somewhere deeper, a small part Afer knew that every long journey starts with what feels like an uncommitted first step. On Monday morning, Lena arrived half an hour early. She stood outside the ninth-floor conference room of the administration building, clutching a paper cup of coffee she'd grabbed from a dockside cafe. Through the transparent glass wall, she could see inside a long oak table, black leather chairs, a large screen mounted at the front, and morning light pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows. She drew in a deep breath. The white shirt and navy slacks she'd ironed the night before rare effort for her felt almost too plain now. One look at the neat line of tailored suits and gleaming watches inside, and she felt as though she had stepped into a place that wasn't meant for her, Miss Hart. Adrian's voice came from behind. She turned. He wasn't wearing a suit today's, just a gray shirt and black trousers, no tie at all. A folder was in his hand, and he gestured for her to enter. "We start in 5 minutes." Lena stepped inside, aware of several heads turning her way. A few offered polite smiles. Others simply looked and then returned to their notes. Adrian introduced her briefly. "This is Lena Hardauer, guest for today. She has lived in the very kind of community the Harbor Hands Project is designed to serve. I want everyone to hear a perspective rooted in real experience." The only empty seat was in the middle of the table. Lena sat, feeling the overhead light make her skin look even paler. A silver-haired man at the head, likely the project manager, began, speaking in an even, practiced tone. Budget plans, pilot locations, potential partners. Each point appeared on sleek slides filled with numbers and graphs. Lena tried to focus, but her mind began to drift. The figures meant little to her. They rolled over her like rough waves. Then a slide appeared. A seaside shack with rusted tin roofing, half collapsed. Her chest tightened. It looked exactly like her childhood home. This one was damaged by a storm, the silver-haired man said. "We've budgeted $8,000 for repairs. Costs are acceptable." Without thinking, Lena raised her hand. The room went still, all eyes turning toward her. "Sorry," she began, her voice slightly shaky. "I just wanted to ask, does that house have damp-proof walls?" The man frowned. "Damp-proof?" "Yes. Without it, in a few months, the walls will be full of mold. Children can get coughs, even pneumonia. A new roof won't help much if the walls still soak up seawater." She swallowed, feeling her hands go cold. "I know, because my family's house was like that. My father patched it again and again, but every rainy season the walls turned yellow with damp." Silence hung for a few beats. Then a young woman across the table began scribbling notes. "I'll add that to the design checklist," she said. The silver-haired man nodded, though his eyes still studied Lena. "Are you in construction?" "No. I just used to live there." Her voice softened, as if apologizing for interrupting. Adrian smiled faintly and said, "That's exactly why I invited her." During the break, Lena stood alone in a corner, eyes fixed on her phone to avoid stares. But the short-haired woman, the one who'd been taking notes, approached. "I'm Marcy, the project architect. Thanks for pointing out the damp-proofing. We've been so focused on the budget that we overlooked that factor." Lena gave a shy smile. "I didn't mean to be a nuisance." "You weren't. You helped us avoid a serious mistake." A few others also came over, asking about life in the fishing village, how people coped during storms, what families needed most. For the first time that morning, Lena felt she wasn't entirely out of place here. In the second half of the meeting, Adrian asked everyone to hear a specific story from Lena. She hesitated till she noticed Evan peeking in through the door, no doubt brought by Gloria. That small, familiar face gave her courage. "There was a night," she began, "when a storm hit without warning. The wind tore the roof away, and water poured in. My father had to carry me and my little brother to the neighbor's house because theirs was built higher. I remember shaking so hard, but I could still hear the waves slamming against the rocks. If there had been a safe place with lights on and dry blankets, it would have been different. Her voice quieted toward the end. The room stayed utterly silent. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her. "When you work on this project," she finished, "please don't forget that every house is more than walls and a roof. It's the feeling of being safe enough for a child to sleep without fearing the sky might fall." Pens scratched across notepads. Marcy nodded firmly. The silver-haired man exhaled, as though something had just clicked for him. When the meeting ended, Adrian walked beside her toward the elevator. "You did well," he said. "Not many people can quiet a room like that." "I just told them what I remember." Lena smiled faintly. "Whether it actually helps the project, I'm not sure." "Trust me," Adrian replied. "You made more of a difference today than you think." The elevator doors slid open, and just before she stepped in, she heard him add, "You should be ready for more invitations." The doors closed, leaving Lena with her now cold coffee and a strange, mixed feeling, fear and anticipation. That afternoon, while Lena was folding freshly laundered blankets at the community center, her phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. She hesitated for a few seconds before answering. "Lena Hart." "Yes, who's this?" "It's Adrian Cole. Are you busy?" His voice was deep and steady, but even through the phone, it made Lena's heart skip in an odd way. She swallowed. "No, I'm just tidying up." "Good. I want to invite you to a fundraising gala tonight for the Harbor Hands Project at the Crestview Hotel." Lena gave a small, incredulous laugh as if he'd just made a joke. "Me, at a gala with people in suits and evening gowns." "Exactly," Adrian said without missing a beat. "You'll help them remember why they're funding this project. And I'll be there so you won't have to stand alone." She was about to decline, but the image of that morning's meeting, those faces focused intently on her, flashed in her mind. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that. Be at the center at 6 o'clock. I'll handle that part." His tone was final, the kind that swept objections aside before they could form. Right at 6, Lena heard a car pull up outside the center. A sleek black sedan, not the kind she usually saw in this neighborhood. The door opened and Adrian stepped out, black suit, silver tie, hair neatly combed, looking like he'd walked straight out of a magazine spread. In his hand was a large paper shopping bag. "For you," he said, passing it to her. Inside was a floor-length navy gown, the fabric soft as water slipping through fingers. "A friend of mine designed it. I gave her your measurements, and she said it would fit perfectly." Lena looked up at him, caught between being moved and overwhelmed. "I can't accept this. It's a loan. You'll return it after the gala. No one's asking you to keep it." Adrian smiled slightly, but his eyes were firm. "Go change. I'll wait." Half an hour later, when she stepped out, Lena hardly recognized herself in the mirror. The dress fit as though it had been made for her, the waistline subtly defined, the fabric flowing over nude heels also brought by Adrian. Her hair was gathered in a loose bun, with a few soft strands framing her face. "You should see yourself right now," Adrian said quietly when she appeared. "You look exactly like the person I want standing beside me tonight." The comment brought a faint flush to her cheeks. She wasn't used to compliments stated so plainly. The Crestview Hotel glowed with light. The grand lobby was laid with a red carpet lined on both sides with displays of previous projects, repaired houses, new wooden piers, children laughing in schoolyards. Lena followed Adrian inside, feeling as though every eye turned toward them. A blonde woman in a striking red gown approached. "Adrian, and this is Lena Hart," he introduced, "the new community advisor for the project." Lena nearly corrected him, but the warm handshake and friendly smile from the woman made her hold back. Throughout the evening, Adrian deftly led her to meet donors, always adding a few words about her real-life experience in the fishing village. Each time Lena spoke, the expressions of the listeners softened, their calculations giving way to something else, an image of a lived reality, not just a proposal on paper. Midway through the evening, Adrian led her out to the balcony for some air. The city spread out before them, the distant lights like stars scattered across the ground. "You're doing really well," he said. "They don't often listen this closely to anyone. I'm just telling them what I've lived through." She rested her hands on the railing, eyes on the stream of traffic below. "But why pull me into this? I'm just someone who cleans floors. You have an entire communications team. My communications team doesn't know what it's like." To stand inside a damp, mildewed house after a storm, Adrian answered without hesitation. "You do, and when you speak, it becomes real." Lena didn't reply. His words weren't just praise, they were a form of recognition, something she rarely received. When the gala ended, they descended the lobby steps together. The car ride back was quiet, both of them lost in thought. When they reached the center, Adrian leaned slightly toward her. "Lena, I want you to be more involved. Not just as a temporary advisor. We'll talk specifics later." She opened the door and stepped out, the navy gown swaying slightly in the night breeze. "I'll think about it." "Oh." Adrian gave a small nod. "Think carefully. Don't want to lose you from this project." The car pulled away, leaving Lena under the warm glow of the street lamp, her fingers brushing the fabric at her side. She wasn't sure what was changing the project, her work or herself, but she knew this. For the first time in years, she felt she had a clear place in something larger than her own life. 3 days after the fundraising gala, Lena was mopping the floor at the community center when she noticed the door to the staff office was ajar. Inside, Sarah, longtime volunteer, was leaning toward 2 others, their voices pitched just enough to spill into the hall. Heard Adrian took her to the gala. Evening gown, private car, pretty sure it wasn't just about work. Yeah, when does a floor cleaner suddenly become a community advisor? Must be something special. Going on with the boss, Lena froze. The mop stilled mid-swipe. Heat flared in her chest, part anger, part shame. She backed away quietly, not wanting to hear more, but the words had already lodged in her mind like nails driven deep. That afternoon, Adrian called. "Lena, tomorrow we're meeting with the city council. I want you to come, share about life." In the fishing village, she bit her lip, her tone hardening. "I think you should take someone else. I don't want misunderstandings." "What misunderstandings?" He heard the edge in her voice. "You know what I mean?" she cut in, trying to keep her composure. "I don't want to be the subject of hallway stories." On the other end, Adrian went quiet for a moment. "Lena, you don't owe anyone an explanation, and I'm not letting baseless gossip dictate my work." But she still refused. After hanging up, Lena sat motionless. The discomfort lodged in her throat like a stone she couldn't swallow. The next day, the center received an anonymous email sent to all staff and some donors. It suggested Lena was exploiting Adrian's attention for personal gain and angling to step into the world of the wealthy. The laptop screen blurred as she read. No sender name, just sharp-edged malice in every sentence. Rumors were no longer whispers in a corner, they'd taken root in written words and in people's eyes. That afternoon, Adrian walked into the center. No suit this time, just a white shirt with sleeves rolled, his expression tight. "You've read the email?" "Yes." Lena set the mop aside. "Hey, I'm guessing you got it too." So did the city council. He exhaled sharply. "I've already forwarded it to our internal investigation team. They'll track down whoever sent it." "That's not necessary," she said quickly. It's just made-up talk. I'm used to being judged. No, Lena. His voice was firm. This isn't just about reputation. It affects the work, the project. I won't let anyone sabotage it. Something in his gaze made her chest Tina protective instinct, raw and unfiltered. But even with Adrian's words, the atmosphere at the center shifted. A few people grew distant. Some glances lingered longer, weighing her. Lena felt every pause in conversation when she walked into a room. One night, locking up to leave, she found a slip of paper pushed under the door. Know your place. No signature. She held it in her hand, a heaviness settling inside. In the fishing village, she'd grown used to nature's harshness. But it turned out people could be colder than a winter wind. On the third day after the email, Adrian returned. "We've found a lead," he said flatly. "I can't give details yet, but it's someone we both know." "Someone you know, or someone I know?" she asked, her voice tight. Both he met her eyes, as if holding back more. "I need time to confirm. In the meantime, I want you to take a few days off, stay out of sight, so they can't keep taking shots at you." "Take off? You mean leave the center? Just for a few days?" "I'll tell everyone you're on a field survey." Lena hesitated. Walking away now felt like admitting guilt, but she also knew staying might only escalate things. She nodded slowly. "All right, but just a few days." That night, as she packed a few things, her phone lit with a message from an unknown number. "Leaving is smart. Don't come back." She tightened her grip on the phone, a chill running down her spine. Then, almost without thinking, she typed back, "I'm not running. I'm stepping back so I can come back stronger." After sending it, she leaned against the wall, letting out a long breath. She didn't know why, but the image of Adrian standing in the center's lobby that afternoon, his eyes steady, unshaken, made her feel a little less alone. During the 3 days Lena stayed away from the center, Adrian spent nearly all his time in the Internal Investigation Department's offices. Copies of the email, IP trace data, and server login logs lay spread across the table like pieces of an enormous jigsaw puzzle. Finally, on the morning of the 4th day, the head of the investigation team walked in and set a thin envelope in front of him. "We've confirmed it." The email was sent from a personal computer in the apartment of Veronica Miles. Adrian stilled. The name was anything but unfamiliar. Veronica had been his personal assistant for almost 4 years. She'd left the company a year ago for a position at an investment fund. There had never been a public falling out between them. "Reason?" he asked. "Not clear yet." But in her personal email, we found a draft with almost identical wording addressed to a journalist she knows. It seems the goal was to discredit Ms. Lena and put pressure on you at the same time. That afternoon, Adrian drove to a quiet cafe downtown. Veronica was already there, sitting upright in a deep blue dress that made her look both elegant and distant. "You still have a habit of not calling ahead," she said first, her tone edged with dry amusement. "And you still have a habit of doing the unexpected." Adrian replied, setting the envelope on the table. "Explain." Veronica glanced at the file, then leaned back in her chair. "Only sent the truth. A janitor suddenly becoming your community partner. Don't you think it's too fast? You have no right to judge who I trust." His voice dropped lower. "Lena has done more than anyone else to keep this project alive. She's earned her place. Or maybe you're trying to convince yourself," Veronica said, her lips curling slightly. "You forget how many people have approached you just for money? I'm protecting you. Protecting me by targeting an innocent person." Adrian's hand tightened. "You know perfectly well how fast gossip can kill a community project." Veronica was silent for a beat, then said quietly, "I saw her replacing me. And you are different." Adrian stood, his eyes gone cold. "You're right. I am different. Because this time, I've chosen to trust someone who doesn't pretend to care." He left the cafe, leaving Veronica in silence. That evening, Adrian called Lena. "I found out." It was Veronica, my former assistant. Lena was quiet for a few seconds. Why would she do that? She thinks she's protecting me or protecting the position she once had. He paused. "I've told her to send a retraction email too. Everyone who received the original, she refuses, I'll release every piece of evidence we have." "You don't have to do that for me," Lena said softly. "I'm used to letting people think whatever they want." "But I'm not," Adrian said firmly. "I won't let anyone turn you into a target." The next day, Veronica's retraction email appeared in every staff and donor inbox. The language was cool, without an apology. But it was enough to erase the formal accusation. Still, Lena felt a hollow space inside. An email could be deleted from a server, but it couldn't be deleted from people's memories so easily. That afternoon, when she returned to the center, some greeted her as if nothing had happened. Others avoided her eyes. The biggest surprise came when Sareth, the same person who'd been whispering in the office days earlier, walked over and handed her a cup of hot coffee. "I heard everything's cleared up," Sarah said, her voice hesitant. "I'm sorry I believed the rumors." Lena accepted the cup, smiling faintly. "Thank you. We all believe the wrong person sometimes." That evening, Adrian dropped by the center with a box of pastries from a well-known city bakery. "Consider. It's a welcome-back gift." Lena laughed for the first time in days. "You think pastries can erase all the trouble?" "No, but they can make tonight a little easier." He sat down on the wooden chair beside her. "Lena, I want you to know. I trust you. Not because you're perfect, but because I've seen that you're always genuine." The warm light from the overhead lamps caught his face, making the words feel less like a polite reassurance and more like a promise. Lena gave a small nod, saying nothing more, but inside she felt the thin layer of ice she'd been carrying finally begin to melt. The rumors had faded, but the echo of the incident still lingered faintly. Lena realized she no longer felt the need to keep her guard up around Adrian. What had once been wary distance was now replaced by silences that, strangely, felt warm. On her first morning back into the normal work rhythm, Lena was rearranging the cleaning supply cabinet when Adrian appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Black or with milk?" "Black. But how did you know?" "Just a guess. Looks like I was right." He set the cup on the table, the curve of his smile catching her off guard for a beat. In the days that followed, Adrian stopped showing up at the center only for project meetings. Some days he came by at noon with a box of hot lunch. Other times she found him sitting on the steps chatting with a group of kids folding paper airplanes. Lena found it strange a CEO who once kept his distance now patiently listening to an 8-year-old describe the farthest plane I've ever flown. One Thursday afternoon, while Lena was mending a torn curtain in the reading room, Adrian sat opposite her, watching her hands move. "You so fast," he observed. "Been doing this for over 10 years. If you're not quick, you don't last." She replied without looking up. "Never thought about doing something else?" "Of course, but this work keeps me close to people who need me. That's enough." He was quiet for a moment, as if committing her answer to memory. Over the weekend, Adrian made an unexpected proposal. "The center's closed tomorrow, right? Come with me somewhere." "Where?" "Think of it as a field trip." The next morning, Lena stepped outside her building to find a black SUV waiting. Adrian drove her to an abandoned plot on the outskirts of town, grass growing high, a few crumbling brick walls mottled with age. "This used to be a warehouse," he explained. "I want to turn it into a vocational workshop for women who've lost their jobs. They could learn sewing, repairs, cooking knee skill that helps them stand on their own. Lena's gaze caught. On a broken window frame, you're asking me to run it? If you're willing, I need someone who understands the value of starting over. She didn't answer immediately, but inside, a small flame had been lit back at the center. Lena found Sarah helping the children paint a mural. The blank white wall was slowly filling with color green trees, blue sky, hands clasped together. Sarah glanced up and smiled at Lena this time. Without the stiffness from before, that evening Adrian sent a text. "Thanks for coming with me. Today, I know you don't like being pulled into surprises." Lena read it and smiled. "As long as the surprise is worth remembering," she replied. A week later, they began the renovation plan. Lena handled finding local tradespeople, while Adrian took care of financing and permits. Often, they worked at the same table, paperwork scattered among coffee cups, their conversations drifting beyond project details. "Do you have family here?" Adrian asked one evening. "Just my younger brother, but he works far away. We haven't seen each other in years." "Want me to help you find him?" Lena shook her head. "When he's ready, he'll come back. Just like MIT takes time to find where you belong." He didn't respond, but he looked at her a moment longer than usual. As the workshop's opening day approached, Adrian invited Lena to help choose the signboard. They stood in the freshly painted room, sunlight streaming through the large windows. "The second step," Adrian read aloud. "What do you think?" "Sounds like a reminder that everyone gets a chance to start again," Lena said. "Then it's decided." They shook hands, but Adrian's hand lingered just a moment too long. Lena pulled hers back, her heart beating faster for reasons she didn't want to examine. That evening, as Lena left the center, she noticed Adrian's car still parked on the street, its interior light glowing. He was reading something, but when he saw her, he rolled down the window. "Need a ride home?" "No, thanks. I live close. Then let me follow you, just to make sure you get there safe." She laughed. "You're a little overcautious." "There are things you shouldn't leave to chance," he said, eyes tracking her steps, and Lena realized the distance between them. Once as wide as the world had narrowed down to the width of a single street. The opening day of the second step dawned under a soft morning sun. The faint scent of fresh paint still lingered, mingling with the aroma of hot coffee from the welcome table. Lena wore a simple beige linen dress, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. The children from the center had given her. Adrian walked over, straightened the pin on her dress, and murmured, "You should be in the front row. This day belongs to you more than to me." When the guests filled the room, Adrian introduced Lena as the one who turned an idea into reality. His gaze rested on her a little longer than necessary, and Lena could see the pride there. After the ribbon cutting, the crowd poured in to tour the space, voices lively and overlapping. Lena was speaking with a group of women eager to register for classes when Adrian came over, handing her a glass of water. "You've forgotten to drink all morning," he said, half a scold, but softened with warmth. "You always pay that much attention." "When it's something important, yes." The answer made Lena pause, and she felt as though she had just stepped into new ground where the line between them wasn't so sharply drawn anymore. By afternoon, when most guests had left, only they and a few volunteers remained to clean up. Adrian had shed his jacket, rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, and worked alongside Lena, moving tables and chairs. Once, as they both bent to lift a box, his hand brushed against hers. Lena instinctively pulled back, but Adrian's eyes held hers. "No need to pull away," he said quietly. The next day, Adrian sent a text, "Free tonight. There's somewhere I want to take you." Lena almost declined, but then she remembered how he had stood with her through the whispers, the politics, and had trusted her with the project's future. So she agreed. They met at 7 p.m. at the center. Adrian drove through familiar streets, then turned down a narrow riverside road. A wooden footbridge led to a small restaurant glowing with warm light. "This is where I come when I need to think," he said. "No one knows I'm here except the owner." Dinner unfolded in candlelight and soft jazz. Lena, unused to such quietly romantic spaces, felt awkward at first. But Adrian told her a few clumsy stories from his student, days mixing up the sugar and salt in coffee during an internship, being called the wrong name by a major client till she was laughing midway through a story. Adrian leaned in, his voice low. "Lena, do you know why I brought you here? To thank me, too. But also because I realized it's been a long time since I've wanted to share something personal with someone." Lena didn't know how to respond. She just tightened her hold on her glass of water. When they left, the river breeze carried a hint of chill. Adrian shrugged off his coat and placed it around her shoulders. "Keep it. I don't want you catching cold. What about you? I handle the cold better. Or maybe I just needed an excuse to stand closer." The last line came with a faint smile that made Lena's heart stumble at her door. She tried to give the coat back, but Adrian shook his head. "Return it the next time we see each other." In the days that followed, they saw each other more often, sometimes to discuss plans for a new cooking class, sometimes just to share coffee on the workshop's front steps. Sarah and the kids at the center began to tease Lena. "You and Mr. Adrian make the best team." Lena would only smile, but deep down she didn't disagree. One evening, Lena stayed late at the workshop to fix a few chairs. Adrian showed up unexpectedly with 2 boxes of hot pastries. "Consider it a reward for today's hardest worker," he said, settling onto the bench beside her. They ate and talked, and in one of the pauses, Adrian asked, "If I wanted to step closer, would you let me?" Lena looked at him. There was no grand promise, no pressure, just an honest question. And in that moment, she knew the distance between them, once like 2 far banks of a river, now had a bridge. On Monday morning, Lena had just set a pot of tea on her desk when an email from Adrian appeared in her inbox. "This Friday night, 25th anniversary gala of the company. I want you to come with me." She read it twice, her heartbeat quickening. That event was known to be reserved for the upper circle Mager shareholders, top executives, and society's elite. Even now, as the company's director of community development, she still felt the distance between herself and that world was as wide as the ocean. While Lena was still debating, Sarah walked in holding a small bouquet. "Heard Adrian wants to take you to the gala. If you turn him down, you'll knock the wind right out of him. But what do you think people will say if they see me there? What people say matters less than the fact he wants you by his side." That thought followed Lena through the rest of the day. On Friday evening, Adrian came to pick her up himself. He wore a black tuxedo with a silk tie, his hair perfectly in place. When Lena stepped out in a navy gown that gently hugged her waist one she had sewn herself, he went still for a moment. He gave a small, disbelieving smile. "I knew you were skilled with your hands, but I didn't know you could leave me at a loss for words." On the drive to the hotel hosting the gala, Adrian told her stories from past events, trying to loosen her nerves. But when they stepped into the grand lobby, beneath glittering chandeliers and dozens of eyes turning toward them, her chest tightened. All over again. They had just reached the reception desk when a female voice called from behind. "Adrian, it's been too long." Lena turned to see a tall woman with glossy blonde hair in a silk red gown. She came forward, placing a hand on Adrian's arm, her eyes flicking over Lena from head to toe. "And who's this?" "A new hire." Adrian gently moved her hand aside. "This is Lena Hart, my guest." Oh, the woman's smile didn't mask the appraisal in her gaze. "I'm Victoria, an old business partner of Adrian's. We used to be quite close." The deliberate linger on close made a few nearby heads turn. Lena gave a polite smile. "Nice to meet you." Inside, she knew this night wouldn't be all champagne and congratulations. For most of the evening, Adrian stayed close, introducing her two shareholders and speaking of her role in the second step. Still, Lena caught the skeptical glances, the soft-spoken asides that drifted like cold drafts through the crowd. When Adrian stepped away to take a call, Victoria approached. "Do you even know whose world you're stepping into?" Men like Adrian, they don't stay long with a woman who isn't from the same class. Lena met her eyes. "I don't need to know how wide his world is. I only know we're standing in the same place right now." Victoria's smile thinned. "We'll see." When Adrian returned, he noticed Lena had grown quiet. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she replied, but avoided his eyes. He frowned slightly, but didn't press in the middle of the crowded room. After the gala, on the drive home, Adrian spoke first. "I'm guessing Victoria said something." Lena was silent for a moment, then asked, "Do you really think we could exist beyond this project?" He turned toward her, his voice steady. "Lena, I don't bring anyone to the important parts of my life unless I'm thinking long-term." The certainty in his tone loosened something knotted inside her. But Lena knew this was far from over. 2 days later, the headlines hit online. CEO Adrienne Cole dating former cold storage worker, PR stunt for community project. Photos of them at the gala flooded the news feeds. Gloria called, worry in her voice. "Don't read any of that. Adrian's handling it." That afternoon, Adrian arrived at the workshop, handing Lena a sheet of paper. "This is an official invitation to join me at a press conference. If you're willing, we'll face it all together." Lena looked down at the paper, then into his eyes. For the first time, she saw no distance, only the two of them, standing firmly on the same side. The morning of the press conference dawned under a soft gray sky, as if the whole city were holding its breath. In the backstage waiting room, Lena clutched the cup of hot tea Adrian had just handed her, the steam curling between her fingers. "I'll speak first," he reassured her quietly. "But if you want to say something, just do it. I'll be right beside you." Lena nodded, though inside her mind churned with 100 unformed thoughts. When they stepped out, Welsa started instantly, bright bursts cutting across the room. Reporters leaned forward, microphones thrust toward them. Adrian stood tall, his voice steady and clear. "Recent rumors have claimed that my relationship with Lena Hart is nothing more than a PR stunt for our community project. I want to make it absolutely clear that is false. I met Lena when she was working in the company's cold storage. Her talent, determination, and compassion turned what seemed like an impossible project into a success. And more importantly," he paused, letting the words land, "I love her." The air in the room seemed to still. Lena felt the weight of every gaze settle on her. One reporter cut straight to the point. "Ms. Hart, what do you say to those who accuse you of climbing up?" Lena took a slow breath, letting her mind flick back to the nights she and Adrian worked side by side, drafting proposals. The visits to shelters for homeless women, the times he'd stood quietly behind her during presentations. "I never walked into Adrian's life intending to climb anywhere," she said. "I just wanted to do my job well like anyone else. If people need a reason for why we're together, I have only one. We choose to stand on the same side." The press conference ended, but its ripple lasted for days. Some outlets still poked fun, but many more praised their candor. What Lena hadn't expected was that donations to the second step doubled in just 1 week. Gloria called with warmth in her voice. "You did well, dear. Not everyone has the courage to face a storm head-on." One weekend evening, Adrian drove Lena to a plot of land by the river. "Remember the first time we talked about the second step?" "I do. You said you wanted it to be more than a place to sleep. You wanted it to be a place to begin again." He smiled. "I bought this land. We'll build the center here. The river breeze was cool and clean. Lena looked at the old, tired building in front of them and imagined it alive with light, warmth, and laughter. In that moment, she understood this journey didn't just belong to Adrian. It was theirs. Months later, at the center's opening, Lena wore a simple white dress and stood with Adrian, scissors in hand, to cut the ribbon. Women who had been helped through her programs came forward to hug her tightly. Even Victoria, the one who had once tried to belittle her, was there, offering a nod of greeting without the old edge in her eyes. Perhaps she, too, recognized that. The outcome of this contest was now undeniable. That night, when the event lights had been turned off and the crowd had gone, Adrian and Lena sat together on the front steps of the new center. Looking out at the river, "You know," Adrian said softly, "I used to think someone like me could never have a normal life. But then you came along with all your simple, ordinary things, made me want to keep them." Lena smiled and rested her head lightly on his shoulder. "And I used to think that people from your world would never truly care for someone like me. But you proved me wrong." They didn't speak again after that. They just sat there, listening to the quiet slap of water against the shore, feeling the peace they had earned through courage and trust. A family doesn't have to start with bloodlines or a grand ceremony. Sometimes it begins with a single moment when two very different people realize they want to walk the rest of the road together. For Lena and Adrian, that moment had come, and together they chose to be on the same side. Perhaps the most beautiful part of today's story wasn't the ribbon-cutting moment or the applause beneath dazzling lights, but the instant two very different people chose to set aside every distance and every prejudice to stand on the same side. Lena and Adrian proved that true love doesn't need grand promises, only enough trust, enough resolve, and enough courage to walk through the whispers and doubt. Thank you for listening until the very end of today's snail story. If this story touched something in your heart, leave us a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, so each week we can take another slow journey together, one that's genuine down to the very last breath.